Welcome to the Unseen Archives. Tonight's record unearths an event lost to the dusty pages of time, a place almost forgotten, the village of Blackwood. A village once marked on maps, but then mysteriously erased, a place steeped in secrets. Our story begins in the autumn of 1928. Hidden deep in one of Britain's misty, green valleys, Blackwood was a small, secluded village, cut off from the outside world. With a population of about 150 souls, the villagers lived by farming, crafts, and peculiar superstitions passed down through generations. The most distinctive feature of the village was the twin bell towers of the old stone church at its center. The two colossal brass bells hanging in these towers rang not only for Sunday services or grand celebrations, but also as a warning against potential dangers from the dense forest surrounding the village. The sound of the bells was, in a way, the very soul of Blackwood. However, the autumn of 1928 was different. That year, an unusual series of storms battered the region. Fierce winds toppled trees, and floods submerged fields. The villagers believed the storms were a bad omen. Elders whispered of an ancient something awakening deep within the forest. The strangeness began when the storm subsided. The village shepherds reported that their animals suddenly became restless at night, howling as they stared towards the forest's edge. Then, strange sounds began to emanate from the woods at night. A deep, muffled hum, as if the very ground was groaning. And strangest of all, rising from the depths of the forest in the dark of night, were peculiar, echoing sounds reminiscent of bells, yet unlike the bells of Blackwood Church, as if other bells were ringing in the distance. The villagers grew fearful. The church bells were normally considered sacred objects believed to protect the village. But now, these eerie bell sounds heard at night felt like an unsettling melody. Father Elias tried to calm the situation. "These are just tricks of the wind," he would say, or echoes in the forest. But even Father Elias would admit that the strange sounds he heard each passing night disturbed his own sleep. The biggest change occurred on the night of November 3rd, 1928. That night, as usual, a fierce storm struck Blackwood. Lightning tore through the sky, and thunder shook the village. As the villagers hid in their homes, everyone heard that terrifying sound. It was the sound of the church bells, but faster, wilder, and more discordant than ever before. The bells rang as if being mercilessly struck by an invisible force within. This incomprehensible ringing lasted for about a minute. Then suddenly, complete silence fell. Even the storm, along with those last bell sounds, had subsided. The next morning, there was an oddness in the village. The sun had risen, the fog had lifted, but everything in Blackwood felt changed. The church towers still stood, but the bells were gone. The twin brass bells had been removed, as if they had never existed. The church doors were locked, its windows intact. There were no signs of forced entry. How two bells so heavy and large could have been moved without making a sound remained unexplained by anyone. Panic set in. The villagers thought the bells might have been stolen. But by whom and how? Even the strongest men in the village found it almost impossible to imagine moving those bells. The village constable, Mr. Arthur Penhaligon, began an investigation, but he found no clues. There were no wheel tracks in the soil, no physical evidence of the bells having been transported. The mystery deepened. After the bells disappeared, an eerie silence settled over the village. Even the normally cheerful children had grown quiet, and adults began to speak in whispers. The village elders whispered that this was a warning. The ancient secrets of the forest had taken the bells. According to them, the bells had disturbed the forest's sleeping spirit, and now they were paying the price. A week later, another incident occurred. Alara, one of the oldest and wisest women in the village, left her home one night and never returned. Alara's house was locked, with no signs of struggle or forced entry inside. Only a dried flower petal lay at the edge of her bed. This flower petal belonged to a rare plant found deep in the Blackwood forest, and according to local legends, it marked the forgotten path deep within the woods. Mr. Penhaligon and a few young villagers set out to search the forest for Alara. Despite days of extensive searching, no trace of Alara was found. During the searches, the young men claimed to have stumbled upon strange rock formations they had never seen before deep in the forest. They said these formations looked like colossal hand-carved statues, but too large and odd to be man-made. However, when they returned, they couldn't find these places again. It was as if the forest was playing a game with them. The mysterious events did not end with Alara's disappearance. In the following weeks, other people from Blackwood also began to vanish. First the village teacher, then a young couple. Each disappearance, just like Alara's, occurred without a trace. Their homes were locked, their belongings in place. It was as if the people had simply vanished into thin air. Despair and fear grew among the villagers. Some tried to leave the village, but strangely, the roads leading out of the village seemed to stretch, and despite traveling for miles, they never reached another town. Eventually, exhausted and desperate, they would return. Blackwood seemed to have them trapped within its confines. At this point, the outside world began to become aware of what was happening in Blackwood. A merchant from a nearby town set out for Blackwood, but never reached the village. After the merchant's disappearance, the regional police force launched an investigation. The team scoured the valley where Blackwood Village was supposed to be located. But despite their searches, they found no trace of the village. It was as if Blackwood had completely vanished from maps and from the face of the earth. Police reports stated that the region was geographically inconsistent. The mountains and valleys did not align with their positions on maps. Even the villagers who had previously claimed to reach the village's location said they couldn't find that area again when they returned. Blackwood Village, along with all its inhabitants, had literally evaporated. Even today, the disappearance of Blackwood Village remains an unexplained enigma. The church bells were never found. The village's name has now become a faint, barely legible smudge even on old maps. Some say the village was dragged into an alternate dimension. Others whisper that the ancient powers of the forest took revenge by swallowing the village that disturbed them. Perhaps one day, the secret of Blackwood will come to light, or perhaps it will continue to slumber forever in the depths of the unseen archives. This record was an excerpt from the Unseen Archives. Until our next mysterious case,